Hola amigos y amigas del Este, estamos en este ciclo de conversaciones con los directores y directoras. En este caso tenemos a Emilija Gašić, que ella es la directora de 78 días, una película de Serbia muy maravillosa que se las recomiendo ver en salas, en cine, en pantalla grande. La directora recién me estaba comentando que está viajando mucho con esta película, está visitando muchos festivales, así que es una posibilidad que tenemos de ver en nuestro Perú, en nuestra América Latina, esta historia tan distinta, quizás una guerra que nos queda muy lejana en tiempo y en geografía, pero que sin embargo tiene una actualidad apabullante por las situaciones que se están presentando o que se están intuyendo en el mundo. Así que esta película está en la competencia al Este, que es la competencia central de nuestro festival, la competencia más longeva. Vamos a conversar unos 20, 30 minutos con la directora para intentar contextualizar esta historia que lleva el nombre de los días que duró la guerra kosovar a través de los ojos de tres niñas, tres hermanas de diferentes edades, con una cámara VHS, una tecnología que en esos momentos se hace cotidiana en la vida de las familias de Occidente. Y bueno, vamos a ver qué nos cuenta la directora. Emilia, welcome to El Este. We are very happy to have your movie. It was one of those movies that once one of the programmers watched, he said, "You have to watch this movie, it's amazing." And we all watched it together and we agreed that you've made a beautiful and very special movie, right?
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, even virtually, although I couldn't come to be there in person. Maybe next time.
Yeah. I read somewhere that you are making a very interesting movie also. So let's talk about 78 days and then maybe we can talk about your projects and who knows, maybe we can show your next movie here. We really like to make a relationship with directors. So
Oh,
it
that's
would
great.
be, yeah, this is like the start, you know my face, you know the festival, you
Of
maybe
course.
will be here. Maybe when we invite you to Peru, you will say, yes, these are my
No,
friends
absolutely.
from Aleste.
It's
Okay,
great.
Emilia, so tell us about this movie, how it started, because this is the story of three sisters. Maybe you can make a short synopsis
Mhm.
first, and then we can talk about the genocide of this movie.
Sure, yeah. So the film is about three sisters that are filming each other during the period of 78 days of the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999. And they start doing this like video diary when their father is mobilized essentially in the Serbian army and he has to go. And then there's like a couple of kids coming in their neighborhood from Belgrade, this is all happening in central Serbia. So it's like in a small town. And a lot of people at the time actually did leave bigger cities and go to, if they had any relatives, they would go to these smaller towns or villages, sort of to as a form of shelter. And it is partially based on what I've lived through because I remember this period. I was turning 8 that year, and I do have two sisters that are older than me, and I understand that family dynamic really well. And because we just happened to have a camera when I was a child, we would actually shoot a lot, and I did have some. It's actually called High 8. I think you mentioned VHS, and a lot of people think it is VHS, but it's a form of it's a format after VHS, before mini DV. I'm a little bit of a nerd at this point with this technology, so it's like a smaller camera and it's small tapes. It's still analog signal, even though it is digital, if that makes sense. And one of the reasons why I wanted to shoot on this is because I've had videos from this era on this format that I always found very interesting and cinematic in a way, because my sisters would film, my parents would film, and then people like I wouldn't watch any of this until years later. For whatever reason, it became like a practice where people would have these tapes, but they wouldn't digitize them. Like they would film so much and then they just never would watch this footage. So the same thing happened to me. Sorry, you were going to say something.
So, yeah, I'm thinking, why didn't you make a movie with those tapes?
I mean,
And you
I am,
chose to make a fiction.
yeah, maybe because I think through fiction more than documentary. I haven't really made any, like I made two documentaries they're very short, and it's all part of the school program that I went to here, one in Belgrade and one in New York where I studied at NYU. But I never saw myself as a documentary filmmaker. I always was drawn more to fiction. And I think I was interested in finding what is it that I find cinematic in this format. And one of the things that I did that drew me in was that this was all impulsive and spontaneous, and yet there were cuts in these tapes like that I would watch later, and it feels like it was premeditated or directed even sometimes. And it's just, you know, accidents, or like people maybe didn't think about it too much, or maybe they had some idea. So it's like an instinctual, you know, your instinctual I guess way of storytelling. Like every human being has that instinct in themselves somewhere, you know, they're not even aware of that. So I was wondering, like, is there a way to make a film like this? And then during COVID, when I had a lot of time on my hands, I actually digitized some of the tapes that I still haven't seen at that point. And then I saw some that were happening during the bombing in 1999, and I completely erased these tapes from my memory. Like I was in them, I don't remember them, which is very interesting. Like I completely suppressed it. And that's when I realized, okay, I think I know what I want to do. Like, I'd like to make a film that feels like this. You know, you found a tape 25 years later, and now you're watching it, and it's memories that you've completely erased and you don't remember, you know. So that was kind of the idea.
So what kind of decisions did you make when you were thinking about this story that is absolutely biographical, in terms of framing and in terms of the distance? Because it's really interesting how you who you choose to give the camera to, right? Between these three characters, the main three characters. Yeah, I'm thinking about, we were talking before about the photography director. What kind of directions did you give to this person that is from Argentina, you told me?
Yeah.
And the sound, these two elements.
So yeah, I just want to mention first, it's not autobiographical. It started, you know, from, of course, I've lived through this, I remember this, but then when I started writing, I did an anonymous survey. So I did something like on Google Doc form, whatever it's called, and I sent it out into the Facebook world, and people started sharing it like crazy. And I think I got over 200 replies where people generously shared their experiences of this time and what they remembered. You know, it started very like, you know, light with what kind of music and films they would watch, to what do you remember? Where were you on the 24th of March when it all started? Like, was your father mobilized? How did you feel? And stuff like that. There was like a lot of these type of questions, and people were really, really open to sharing, because there are not a lot of films. There's not a film about, I want to say, made from this like the generation that I'm from, about this period of time. There's like only a couple of films made by older filmmakers from Serbia, but they're like completely different films. They're not about the child's perspective, if that makes sense. So I think that's the main inspiration for me, were these answers and just reading people's experiences and trying to address that in the film as best as I could. You know, having from like the worried parents, the mobilized parent, of course, and then the three different point of views of the sisters, right? So that was kind of like a conscious decision at this point, like who I want to. The story became much bigger than what I, you know, experienced, of course. And in terms of the question that you asked about the DP, yeah, Ines Goland, she's from Argentina, and she doesn't speak Serbian, clearly, and but we worked really, really well, because I thought, specifically because she didn't speak the language, that she could bring something interesting and new, like what she would pay attention to, because we had a very, you know, unusual set, I want to say. We didn't have heavy lighting, heavy gear. We didn't have a, you know, it's a small camera, it's very portable, and I knew that I wanted to shoot everywhere at any given moment. So I didn't want to hide. Like I didn't want the actresses to think, oh, I have to hide behind this, big lighting, like big light or something, big reflector or whatever, you understand? And so everything was really planned to the, to the little details. But then we also were open on the day of during shooting that, if we see something, we will have to be flexible and open to new things that arise because, working with kids and also a very specific medium and a story require this type of, I want to say, like almost improvisation like manner of working, although, which is interesting because we did plan everything. Everything was planned, and then we're just ready for when these moments of magic happen that I called them. Like we just have to be ready to capture those too. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I may have gone above and beyond.
The cast is amazing. This child is delicious to watch. She's so funny and so in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about the casting. Before, how you knew these actresses, and how did you work with them on set? Maybe did you rehearse? Did you give them like freedom to expand, especially the kid?
So yeah, I knew that the three sisters will be the most difficult to find. That really took a long time. It took a year, I want to say, a little over a year. Yeah, my casting director and I think we started with, like, again, a Facebook posting. That was it. Like, let's just see what's out there. And because I knew that I wanted to work with somebody who didn't work in films before, that was kind of like the logic behind the Facebook posting. And then we sort of, started looking at pictures first and like seeing if there are people who look alike. It started very, very, very soft search, if that makes sense. And just 300 applications, which was like insane for a small town where I shot this film. I wanted to shoot it in a small town where I'm from and in a specific accent, which makes really no difference to people who are outside of the region. But it really made, it was a big, important decision for me because I wanted them to, even for Serbian audience, for them to feel like sisters and that they speak in a certain way. And I knew that you cannot teach children to speak a certain, like you have to find specific people that can just do this and be this, if that makes sense. And Victoria, who plays Ticha, I think she applied like she was in the first, she was one of the first applications, I want to say, but I didn't consider her until a year later when she was 1 year older, which is very interesting to me. For example, she was there, she had some acting experience. She actually did study, like she went to like a acting school in my town, and all of them have some, acting school experience, apart from the eldest one who was at the academy at the time. But it was for all of them, it was their first film. And there was different eliminatory circles, like rounds essentially. So like we would see them in person, we would do some exercises with them, see how they felt in front of a camera, like can they sing and not feel, there's like exercises that you can just do with them and see how they feel, if they're comfortable enough in their bodies, which I think was important for this. And then at some point I had like different pairings, like groups of three, these three that work together, and then I would just call all of them and see them in person and then mix them up and see like who has the best chemistry. And when I paired the three of them, I remember feeling something in my stomach, is like butterflies, kind of like, falling in love, that type of thing. Like, oh yeah, I feel it. Like I feel like I can work with the three of them, and they actually look alike, which was kind of great. But yeah, it took a moment.
So this is your first long film, right? Your first feature. It's really amazing, the work you've done. Really, really. And
thank you.
When I hear you talking about the process and this like butterflies kind of feeling, and the strong decision of making it really regional and very authentic, is something that I think it goes against the algorithm kind of tendency. Yeah, because we have some movies in Latin America that are everywhere, but it's kind of an issue now, that they pretend to have an accent, or that they make it fake so it could be like more general, like amplified. It's horrible what happens. And the truth is that the more attached you made the movie to the idea you have in your mind, like the accent you mentioned, it shows. Somehow it shows.
Okay.
It's authentic, it works, it makes it not artificial in any way, and this is kind of in the core of the movie. So
I wanted it to be genuine. I wanted it to feel genuine, if that makes sense. Like in order to have it feel like it's somebody else, like somebody else's footage, family archive.
Yeah.
It's like
of course.
and I think for a lot of foreign audience, like non-Serbian audience or the non-regional audience from ex-Yugoslavia, I think that feels that way because they also don't recognize the actors who play the parents. That was the only place where I just had to actually work with known actors because it was really hard. I did consider at some point finding non-actors for these roles too, but it was already really hard to find the three girls, and I knew that I was like, I'm not going to get this lucky even with parents because you really have to find people that are kind of like that. And it's kind of like the film The Bicycle Thieves, where the main character, the man who rides a bicycle, and his son is kind of like, he was just playing that role, and he never became an actor after that because he was the guy that they cast specifically for that, and that was his life. And I knew this was like hard to find, and I just like decided, okay, I'm going to work with actors that I've known, I have some relationship with, and I know they can pull this off. But I think it still works because they were also really happy to work in this unusual way, sort of without makeup, nothing, just like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it shows. It feels authentic. So
that's great.
Even though, if we don't recognize the accent or even if we are not familiar with the exact war and conflict, because you make it from the gaze of a child and from this kind of subjective camera, it makes sense, and it should be like that.
That's the hope, you have when you start making a film. Of course, you want it to be very specific in the decisions that you make, but then you also want it to speak to a bigger audience. You don't want it to make a film just for your friends and for my hometown, essentially, where this is happening, right? You kind of try to make it universal, and you're hoping that people will feel the same.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of other tools to make it universal.
Absolutely.
I know that decisions that maybe the market thinks about, right? The accent is not important, and this, of course, is important. Of course, important because it has to be authentic also for your people and for your country.
Yes.
Otherwise, why we make movies? Why we watch movies? Yeah. So the last question, let's talk about your next project that I read something, I find it very, very amazing. And it makes me think about this project, this movie you made, that it has some kind of genre feeling at some scenes, right?
You tell me. I feel like it's hard for me to pick. Like, I always called it like a coming of age found footage. That was like the thing that I classified for myself.
Right.
But I am interested in genre filmmaking, and most of my a lot of my short films have sort of dipped into the horror or thriller-esque ideas. So maybe that's coming through. I can't tell anymore. I'm very subjective at this point. I don't like to label something completely as one thing. Like life, in life there is also laughter and tragedy and horror, and like there's many different things. So I don't like when something is just completely wrapped up in one sort of, so I hope, that the next thing that I do make, that it kind of feels similar to that, where it doesn't have to be just this one thing.
Can you tell us about the project and in what part of the process are you?
Very early stages, so that's why I'm a little hesitant to speak about it, because I'm a little superstitious. But yeah, no, essentially it's like very, very early stages. I'm interested in telling a story about menopause specifically, and that's something that's been with me for for years, like this project also, 78 days. I think I thought about it for 10 years before I started writing. And now it's been like, I want to say 6 or 7 years that I've thought about this one. So I'm hoping that, it's kind of like, it's blooming in my mind and ready to sort of develop, but very, very early stages. It's about a woman who's misunderstood and is going through menopause in a small town in Serbia again. But there are some horror thriller elements, but also comedy as well. That's the idea. Yeah.
Okay, looking forward to watch it too. And thank you very much for your time, Emilia, and good luck because you're in a competition.
Thank you very much.
The rest of the movies are really amazing too. So we are happy that we make a very, solid and quality group of movies.
I wish I was there.
Yeah, well, we have another movie that is called Phantom Youth. Have you watched it?
No, I haven't. I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's the same war, but from the Kosovo point of view, and these kind of 18-year-old girls that they go to university and they find that there's no future for youth. So why are they studying and they are making friends, but why? So these big questions, and it's really amazing that we could pair both of you in order to...
I'd love to see it. Yeah, I would really love to see it. I feel like there's probably going to be a lot of filmmakers, hitting 30, 30s, getting into 30s, remembering their childhoods and like making films, trying to make sense of it all instead of going to therapy. I always joke. But
it's very curious because this director, she's 24 years old.
Oh, wow. She's very young. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, very young. Yeah. So, it's good to find this kind of subjects, right? In the new narratives. Thank you very much. We have your movie and we're happy, and you have us now in Latin America to show us your next projects. So
great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.